Hi everyone, today we're going to practice modeling in Moment of Inspiration again, and we're going to do this object here, which is from a free Kitbash set. I found some issues with this object, and rather than trying to fix them, I decided to remodel this from scratch in Moment of Inspiration. So let's jump right into MoI and start modeling. We're going to do this object based on reference images, and you can add reference images in Moment of Inspiration under the View tab here. If you click on Image, you can add images up here. You just need to navigate to the folder where you saved your reference images, and you can download these two images. I've provided a link in the video description. First of all, let's add the side view reference. And the first thing we need to do is pick a corner point. I have grid snap switched on, and I'm going to snap my cursor to the third square over here on the left, and then to the third square over here on the right. And if I switch off grid snap and hide the grid, it'll be a bit easier to move this image up to about here. And we can add more images. So let's go ahead and add the image for the top view. I'm going to switch on grid snap and the grid again. And again, I'm going to snap to the third square on the left. Drag this over and snap to the third square on the right side, and we need to rotate this image 90 degrees. We have a couple of options when we add reference images here. For example, we can draw below objects, with objects, or above objects. For now, I'm going to keep this at the default. You can also choose to show the image in all views, which means that you will also see them in the 3D view. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to change that to orthographic views only. We also have an option for transparency. I'm going to switch that to maybe 60% and then hit done. And this will lock the reference images so we can't move them accidentally. I'm going to switch off grid snap and the grid. And before we start, I want to make sure that these images are lined up properly. And in order to do that, I'm going to draw a curve. And I'm going to pick a rectangle from the corner. And I'll just draw it by left clicking once here and once up here. And then I'm going to select this curve, go to Edit, Show the Points. And I'm going to select these 2 points and move them over a bit. And these ones are actually okay. We could move these over a bit, but we don't need to be super precise. So let's move them to about here, and we don't need to worry about the other points. I'm going to hide the points again, and I'm going to move this curve over to here, and you can see the position of this image here is a bit off. So we need to go back to View, click on Image, and now we can move this around a bit. And I'm going to line this up with the bottom of this curve here. And I think we're good. So let's hit done, go back to the split view, and I can delete this curve. Now, like in Cinema 4D, you always have more than one option to do the same thing, and in many cases there is no right or wrong. So there's a number of ways you can create this shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a curve, and we're going to create the big shapes first. So we're going to start with the outline and then add this extruded part, and then we're going to add the details. So let's go ahead and grab a polyline, and I'm going to create my first point maybe here. We don't really need object snap, but it doesn't hurt to have it switched on. What is always helpful is straight snap. So I can just left click to trace the outline of this main shape here, and then close that curve by left clicking on that first point down here again. And now we can select this curve, go to edit and show the points. I'm not going to worry about these round corners for now, but what we can do right away is chamfer this corner here. So I'm going to select fillet and chamfer. Now we need to select the objects that we want to chamfer. It's this curve, right click to confirm, then select this point, confirm by right clicking again. And in this case, the offset is just what I need. So I'm going to confirm by right clicking, and we don't need to adjust the points here. Maybe we could move this one down a little bit. And before you select new points, make sure to deselect everything, because unlike in Cinema 4D, you just need to left click on points, edges or faces to add them to a selection, or left click on them again to deselect them. And it's easy to forget that. So I'm moving these points down a bit now, something like this, and then move this point over, and I'll move this point over to about here. And this one's actually okay. So now I've just selected this curve again, and I'm going to switch off show points. And next what we can do is go to the top view and use extrude to extrude this shape. And I'm going to extrude to the edge here. Now you can see that once we've created this solid, we can't really see the reference image anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to View, Image, and I'll change the draw mode from below objects to above objects. Hit done, and now we can see that reference image again. Our curve is still selected. We don't need this anymore, so I'm going to hit delete to get rid of it. Let's go back to the front view, and next I'm going to create the shape for this extrusion here, and I'm going to start with a curve again. So let's use a polyline, and I'll create 3 points like this. Right click to finish the operation, and then I'm going to select this curve, go to construct, offset, offset, and we don't need to change the default options here, we just need a new curve, and I'll create the offset here. And now I can select this curve, go to edit, show points, and hold down Control and Shift before I select this point, because otherwise I would also select the main shape here. And let's also select this point here, and let's move these over and switch on object snap, and I'll snap them to the other curve. Next I'm going to select both of these curves, go to the top view, and I'll move these over and snap them to the side of the object here. And then I'm going to select this curve, go back to the top view, and I'll move this over a bit further, but not all the way. I don't want to make the extrusion as big as it is in the reference image. So next what we need to do is create a surface between these curves and then combine that surface with the main object. But there's one thing we should do first. If you have a look at the reference image, you can see we have this rounded corner here. And this is something that we should create right away. The first time I did this, I didn't fillet the curves. And once I had combined this shape with the main shape, it wasn't possible to add a fillet to the edge. So that's why I'm adding this fillet right away. So with this point selected, I'm going to fillet, and we need to select the objects. So let's select that curve, right click to confirm, and now we can select this point, right click to confirm, and actually I don't want a chamfer, I want to fillet this. So, and a radius of 4 is exactly what I need, so I'm going to confirm this, and we need to add the same fillet to this curve here. And we need to switch on show points for each of these objects separately. So I'm going to do this for this curve. I'm going to use fillet, select the corner, confirm, and I'm going to fillet with the same radius, confirm that. And let's hide those points. Select these two curves, and under construct we can use the loft option to create a surface in between these. And next what I'm going to do is, well, first of all I need to confirm this operation. The two curves are still selected, I'm just going to delete those. And I'll select this object, and I can switch to edge mode by selecting an edge. I'm going to select this one down here, and I'm going to copy and paste it. And in the top view, I'm going to grab it and move it over and snap it to the end of the object. So it's right here. And then I'm going to select this object again, go to edge mode by selecting this edge, and we can loft these two edges, right click to confirm the operation, left click to deselect everything, left click to select this edge, left click to select this object, left click to select this edge, and loft again, right click to confirm, and left click, and I'm just going to delete this curve down here right now. So what we have is 3 different objects, and we need to turn them into a single object. We can select them, we can either join them, or we can do a Boolean Union. And you can see up here that it's still just a joined surface, and in this case there's nothing wrong with the object except it has holes at the front and at the back, and we can close those by using the planar option under construct here. So this will turn this into a solid object. And because this extrusion is sitting right on top of the other shape, we can't use a Boolean Merge. And I don't want to use Boolean Union because that would cause more work. If you take a look at the reference image, we have this slanted surface here that we don't have on the extruded shape that we just created. So what I'm going to do to create that shape on our new object is I'm going to draw a polyline, and I'm snapping to object, so I can snap to this point, for example, to this point, and then create another point here. Right click to finish that curve, select the curve, select this object, go to Boolean, and we can merge these two objects. And the curve is still selected. I'm also left clicking on this part down here, and I'm going to delete both of them. And now we have these two objects here, and we can select both of these and then do a Boolean Union to turn these into a single object. In the top view, you can see that we also have some cutouts at the front and at the back. I'm going to create these with polylines again, and I'm going to draw one here. And I can just right click to create another polyline once I've confirmed or finished the first one. And I'm going to create that curve here at the back. Right click to finish it, and now I can select both curves and the object. Again, do a Boolean merge. Select these parts, the curves are still selected, and I'm going to delete all 4 of these objects. Okay, so that's looking good so far. I'm going to name this object. Right now it's still an unnamed object. I'm going to call this main body. And once I do that, it appears in the scene browser under objects. I'm going to hide it for now, so we can focus on the other details. And we're going to use curves for all of these. Let's start with the one at the top. I'm going to draw a circle, use diameter, so I can left click once, drag this radius down, and you can see I'm using straight snap, so let's drag it straight down to about here. Left click, let's move this over a little bit, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle using 3 points. So I can left click to snap to this point on the circle, left click to snap to this point, and then I'm going to left click here right at the center to finish that curve. And in order to combine these 2 curves, I'm going to select them and use the trim option under edit. And we can use the default settings here, so just right click twice, then select these 2 curves and delete them, select these 2 and use join to turn them into a single object. Next I'm going to the transform tab and use mirror. Pick the start point here, then just drag my mouse until I mirror this over, left click again, select both of these curves. I'm going to trim these. Again, right click twice to confirm the instructions up here, and then we can just delete these 2 edges, select these 2 curves and join them. And let's show the points. I'm going to select these and move them over to line them up with the reference image. So that is our first curve. Next, let's create this curve here. And this is pretty much the same that we just did. So I'm going to drag out a circle here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. Then select both of these curves, trim them, delete these 2 curves, select these 2 and join them. And for this one, I want to fillet the corners right away, because if we don't do this right now, it might become a problem later because we have these soft curves on the main shape here. So I'm going to select this curve, show the points, use fillet, select the points I want to fillet, confirm, and 4 is a bit big. Let's try 1. One is too big as well. Let's do maybe 0.5. 0.5 looks okay to me. So right click to confirm, and there is our next basic shape. Let's continue with this one. We can start with a circle from the center here. So just left click, then drag out the radius to about here, and we need a rectangle. I'm also going to draw it from the center, snap it to this point, make it maybe a little bit wider than it is in the reference image, and then just move it over. And it's not long enough. Let's do 2.5 maybe. 2,5. And I'll just move this back over to about here. And again, we can trim these two curves, delete the parts that we don't need, and join the remaining parts. And I'm going to add some fillets to the corners here as well. So let's show the points and fillet, and I'm going to select all 4 of these. And let's see, let's try point 1. I'll make this a little bit bigger. And 3, maybe a bit much. Let's do 2, and that's fine. And over here we have the exact same shape, so we can just select this curve, control, drag to create a copy, and I'll just move this into position over here and rotate it 180 degrees, and then just move it over. Okay, so there's only this shape left, and we can start this with a circle again. Let's pick diameter, and I'm going to left click here and left click here, and then we need to create a polyline, and I'm going to snap it to the circle here, and I'll just draw straight lines for now. And before I place that last point, we need to make sure that it's lined up with this point on that circle. And one thing we can do to do that is, if I left click and hold down my left mouse button and drag, I will create a construction line. So now if I let go of the left mouse button, I can move around, and you can see this new grain line is still there. And then I'm going to snap this to this point on the circle. Again, hold down the left mouse button and drag to create another construction line. And now we have 2 construction lines, and we can snap that point to the intersection. And then we can just finish that curve by clicking on this point on the circle, right click to finish the curve. And now we can select both of these and trim them, confirm twice, delete this part, select these 2 and join them. And I want to add a couple of chamfers and bevels, so I'm going to show the points, and let's start with this one down here. I'm going to fillet this, and maybe let's do a radius of 2, maybe 3, 2.5, so 2.5 looks about right. I'll confirm that. And next I'm going to add a chamfer to these 2 points, and let's try an offset of 2. That's looking good. Right click to confirm, and I'm also going to fillet this point here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's try 1, and 1 is looking good, so I'll confirm that. Hide the points, and these are all the shapes that we need. I'm going to select them And in the top view, I'll just move these over. The only reason I'm doing that is because once I switch the main body back on, it's a little more difficult to select these curves when they're inside that main body. There are ways you can do that by holding down Control Shift, but I'm having trouble doing that, so I prefer to move them out of the way. So let's go ahead and make our main body visible again. Switch to the perspective view, and before I continue, I want to add the fillets on these edges here. And one of the reasons is because it will make it easier later to use Boolean operation to get that shape into this part of the object. And you can see in the reference image that we have these rounded corners here. So let's select the object and let's select these edges. And I'm going to fillet them. And you can see the fillet looks a little bit uneven. And also, I think I'm going to apply 2 different fillets to these edges. So I'll just hit Escape and select these edges here and fillet those first. And I'm going to switch the shape from circular to constant distance. And this is looking a lot better. And I think I'll keep the distance at 1. So I'll just confirm this. Select the object again. Go to edge mode by selecting the first edge and then the other ones. And let's fillet those edges. Let's make the distance slightly bigger. I'll try 1.5. And that looks good. So I'll just confirm that. And next I'm going to move these curves into place before I extrude them and create the shapes on the body here. So let's start with this one. Let's go to the top view and I'll just move this over and snap it to here. And we need to move this over a little bit. Now let's pick this curve here and I'm going to move it over and snap it to here. And I'll move this one over. It seems I accidentally moved them over to the left a bit when I moved them back. So let's go back to the top view and move this curve over. And we need to subtract this shape not only from this face here, but also from this face here. So let's switch to the right view here. Show the points of this curve. And I'll just hit Alt Q to isolate it. I'm going to select these bottom points and then I'll just move them up and snap them to this surface here. And actually, before I do that, I think I'm going to move this over a little bit. Let's go back to the right view and then move it down and snap it to the surface here. Next, I'm going to select both of these. Let's go to the top view, deselect this curve, and I want to make sure these are lined up, and it looks like they are. So So let's just go ahead and move these over, snap them to this face here. And I also need to reposition those. So I'll just move these over a little bit to about here. Let's go to point mode. We also need to add a fillet to these corners here. Just hit Alt Q to isolate the object. And I'm going to select these 4 points here and fillet them. Let's make the offset a little bit smaller. 1 looks fine. We could also move these points up a little bit. Alt Q to bring everything else back again. I'm going to hide those points. And adjust the position of this curve a little bit. And it looks like I accidentally moved these two. So I'm just going to put those back. Let's select this one, show the points. I'm going to isolate it before I select these points, and then I'll just move these up a little bit to about here. And I'm going to move these points at the bottom down a little bit, which for some reason I can't seem to do. I'm not sure why. Let's switch off Object Snap, see if that works better, but it doesn't. I wonder why I can't do that. Interesting. So I can move the entire object. Let's see if I can move the points at the top. And that seemed to work. Let's hit Alt Q to unhide everything again. And we probably need to adjust the position of this again. And it looks like the points were not aligned, so I just scaled them down and made them flat. And now I'm going to move this object over and snap it to the surface here. Okay, so that's looking good. So let's go ahead and start extruding some curves. I need to move this back. I'll start with this curve here, and I'm going to extrude it. Switch off Object Snap, and I'm going to extrude this back maybe 0.6 looks about right. So minus 0.6. Let's just enter this up here. Let me undo that and just try again. that's better. And we can delete this curve. And then select the main body, and let's do a Boolean difference. Select this object, right click to confirm, and there we have our first detail. Let's go ahead and do the same with this one. I'll extrude this back minus 0.6. Delete that curve. And again, do a Boolean difference to get that shape in there. Next, I'm going to extrude this one. And I'll extrude this down maybe -1. Let's try and do a taper. And we need to flip that. And -1. Hit delete to delete that curve. Select the main body. And let's do another Boolean difference. Next, I'm going to extrude this one, minus 0.6, delete that curve, and again, use a Boolean difference to get that shape in there. And I'm going to extrude this curve back to, let's check the top view. It's a bit difficult to see. Maybe to about here. So let's see how that looks. I'm going to delete that curve and then do a Boolean difference. And there we go. I think that looks fine. And there's one more detail I want to add. I want to create an additional extrusion at the center of this detail here. I go back to Cinema 4D to the 3D model. You can see that we have this screw in here, and it's extruded down a little bit further. I'll do this slightly differently. So let's go to the front view, and what I'll do is I'll start with a circle, use diameter and object snap, and I'll draw this circle out like so, so it fits exactly into that opening here. And I'm going to scale this down to maybe about here. Let's do 1.6, 1.65 maybe. And I'm going to control drag a copy out here and just snap it to here. I'll just use the move tool. You can grab that under the transform tab, move, and now I can snap to the center of this object and drag it up and snap it to the center here. I just selected both of these objects. So let's do that again. And I need to move this forward a little bit. Maybe something like this. think that looks about right. So let's go ahead and extrude that back a little bit. Let's do -1. Delete that curve. Select this object and let's do a Boolean difference. And we'll do the same up here. I'll just move it back and snap it to here. Extrude it back -1. Delete that curve and then do a Boolean difference on these two. Okay, and that's looking pretty good so far. And maybe we could add a couple more details. So let's see, let's go to the front view. And I think what I'll do is I'll create a box. Maybe something like this. And I'm going to select it and go to transform array and do a directional array. And I'll do an offset extend. And now what I can do is I can click anywhere on the object, move my mouse over, I hope I'm doing this right, and then left click again to define the distance between the copies. And then I can drag my mouse out and create as many copies as I want. And left click again to confirm. But before I do, I'm going to rotate this a bit. And I want to use an angle of 30 degrees. And let's use the array option again. So I'll make it a distance about this wide maybe, and then drag out a couple of copies. And I'm going to also draw a curve. In this case, I'm just going to draw a simple line from here to here, and I'm going to control drag out a copy, bring this down to here, maybe move this over a bit, and then I'm going to select these objects and do a Boolean merge. And then I can just marquee select these parts and these parts and get rid of everything, and I'm left with this. And we can select this and move everything down to about here maybe, and let's go to the top view. And move these over a bit. To here maybe. And let's go ahead and select this object and do a Boolean difference. And I'm going to select these cubes in the top view, right click to confirm the operation. And now we have this additional detail in there. And I think I'm also going to add something at the top here. So let's go to the top view, and what I'll do is I'll just draw a polyline here, show the points, and I'm going to fill it these points here, and radius of 1 is fine. And I'll move this straight up to about here, and then extrude it down to about here. But before I do, I need to close that curve for what I want to do. So I'm going to draw another line. Let's create a single line, and I'm going to select both of these and join them. And now I can extrude these down and create a surface like this. Let's get rid of that curve by deleting it, and I'm going to select these two objects and do a Boolean Merge, and then I can select this one and delete it. So we're getting this cut out here, and later we can fillet the edges. And what we could also do, if I isolate this, go to the top view, let's go ahead and add some screw holes in there. So I'm going to left click here, then switch off Object Snap, and actually I want to draw a circle from center. So snap that to here, switch off Object Snap, drag this out to about here, and I'm going to mirror this. I need to switch Object Snap back on, and I'm going to mirror this along the center of this object. So I'm going to click on here. I need to make sure that I only select the circle, of course. Okay, select both of these objects, and I'll just move them straight up, extrude them down into that shape to maybe about here, and then do a Boolean Difference. Let's hit escape. Let's get rid of these curves first. So now I'm going to do a Boolean Difference. Hit Alt Q to unhide everything else, and there we go. And I think that's all the details that I want. So now we can go ahead and start filleting or chamfering additional edges. And I'm going to start on the outside here of this main shape. And this is not the main body, this is the top cutout. So let's go ahead and select some of these edges here. Let's go to the front view. I also need this edge here. Deselect these ones, and let's see, actually we need all of these here, so I'm going to select these ones and these ones. So that's basically all of these edges here. And I'm going to fillet these. Let's try 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like something just went wrong. I still have all the edges selected that I want, so I'll just try that again. Three actually looks okay, so I'm just going to confirm that. And I also want to add a fillet to this edge here. Maybe not that much. Let's do maybe 2. And I think that looks about right. So let's confirm that. And let's add a fillet to this edge. And here we need to be careful because we have another edge that's close to this one. So let's go ahead and try and fillet that. And you can see it doesn't really work because the radius is too big and one is still too big. So let's see if we can do 0.5. And 0.5 is working, so I'll stick with that. Let's confirm that. And then I'm going to select the edges on the outside here. I'm trying to do loop selections, but they don't really work, so it looks like we need to select these manually. I also want the edges on the other side. And actually, before I add those bevels or fillets, I think I'm going to make a backup copy of these objects. So I'll just control drag a backup copy out and move that back. And I'll name these. So this is my backup. Let's call this no fillets main body. And this one here is no fillets top cutout. So unfortunately we need to reselect all of these edges. This is also something that is not like what you're used to in Cinema 4D, where you can switch between polygon, edge and point mode, deselect the object, and when you reselect it and go back to point or edge mode, all of the edges that you had selected before are still selected. Unfortunately, that's not how it is in Moment of Inspiration. Okay. And it looks like we've got all the edges that we need. So let's hit fillet. And 0.5 looks like it's a bit much. Let's try constant distance. I think I'll stick with that because I find that the objects I export from MoI and import into Cinema 4D tend to look not quite as round as they do in Moment of Inspiration. So I'd rather go with bigger fillets in MoI because I think those will look better in Cinema 4D. So let's confirm, and let's continue. And this is taking a bit because we just can't fillet everything with the same settings. It would just not look good. So let's continue with these edges here. And here I should actually be able to do a loop selection. My shortcut for that is Shift L. If you've watched my previous tutorial, you know there's a text file with the shortcuts I'm using. You can grab that and use that shortcut if you want to. So let's go ahead and fillet these edges. Let's do something a little bit smaller. We need to bring these down quite a bit. So make these 0.2, confirm, and let's see, let's go to the front view, select the object, select this edge, and then I'm just going to select these, and I'm going to fillet those, and 0.2 seems to work fine. Let's try 0.3. Confirm. And let's continue with this area here. Just select a couple of edges here. Try and do a loop selection, which is working in this case. And let's go ahead and fillet these edges. And these ones I'll do 0.4. And I think that's fine. So right click to confirm. Next I'll do the edges up here. Alt Q to isolate the object. And the loop selection does not really work here, so we need to select these manually. That looks fine. Hit Alt Q to bring back the top cutout. Let's go ahead and select it and isolate it. Let's fillet those. Now 0.4 almost is a bit much. So I'll go back and I'll just bevel these edges again with a smaller radius. Let's try 0.3 instead. So I'll make a loop selection and then just deselect the edges that I don't want. Let's fillet those, confirm, and I'm also going to fillet these edges here. Let's try 0.1. So the only thing that's left is these areas here. And before I add the fillets to those, I want to add one final detail. So let's go to the front view, and what I'll do is, first of all, I'm going to hide the reference images because I don't need these anymore. And then I'm going to draw a circle here, and I'm going to move it back and snap it to this surface here. And I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Let's do 0.3. And I'm going to extrude this forward to maybe about here. Delete that curve, select this object, select this edge. I'm going to chamfer this. Maybe 0.2. And then I'm going to isolate it. And in the front view, I'm going to draw a polygon. Actually, I want to draw a curve. Yeah, polygon is the option that I actually want. So let's switch on object snap. I want to create this from the center, and I want 6 sides. And I'm going to select this curve and just scale it down a little bit. And I'm also going to fillet the corners, and 0.1 actually looks good. We could try 0.2. Yeah, let's go for 0.2. Done. And in the perspective view, I'm going to extrude this back. Delete that curve and do a Boolean difference. And then I'm going to select these edges, do a loop selection, and I'm going to fillet those. 0.05 maybe. Alt Q to bring back the other objects. And I'm going to control drag a copy out here and put it over here, and it looks like I put it in the right position here. So this is screw number 1, and this is screw number 2. I'm going to isolate the main object again. Now we also need to bevel or fillet the edges here. So I'm going to select those. Try a loop selection, which does not really work, so let's go ahead and fillet those. And we'll make that a little bit bigger. 0.2, let's try 0.3. 0.2. Right click to confirm, and now we can take care of these areas here. Let me undo that and fill it again. Let's try 0.1. And I'll stick with that. And I'll apply the same fillet to this area here. So right click to confirm. And now we have everything that we want. So we can mirror this object. Then select both of them and do a Boolean Union. And that worked just fine. Let's hit Alt Q to bring back the other objects. Now we also need to select the screws, and we could also select the top cutout here, and let's go ahead and mirror those over. And let's select these two objects here, do a Boolean Union to combine them. And if you want to, you can put screws up in there as well. I'm not going to do that because this tutorial is already taking too long. But here we go, this is our finished object. So I'm going to save this file. This is tutorial Kitbash 02. And now I'm going to select all of the objects that I want to export. Then go to File, Export. We're going to do Wavefront OBJ. So let's have a look at the geometry. Like in the previous tutorial, I'm going to change the avoid smaller than option here to reduce the amount of detail on those curves. And by default, MoI outputs n-gons, and it only adds detail to the curve. That is this setting here. You can also set it to all and divide polygons larger than a certain number here, and you will also get geometry for the flat areas, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just keep this at 0. So what I will do is I will enter, let's try 0.1. It's always guessing. So you can see the difference to the setting before. Or we could use 0.2, which is not quite as many. 0.1. Actually, at 0.2 it removed more, but I think I'm happy with 0.1. And let's make this high res. I'm going to crank this up. So this will make the bigger curves a lot rounder. And I think for this object, this is more than enough. We can always come back to MoI and change those settings and export an object with a different polygon count, or we could even export the object that we didn't fillet to get a lower poly object. So let's say I'm happy with this. It looks pretty good, I think. Let's hit OK. And let's go to Cinema 4D and see how it looks in Cinema. I'll just start a new file here and drag my OBJ into Cinema 4D using the default settings here. Let's add some ambient occlusion and have a quick look at how it renders. So I think this is looking pretty nice. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you again soon.